The way these markets work is that we ask a yes or no question, and if you buy a yes or a no, and if you're right, you get $1 per contract, and if you're wrong, you lose the money that you put up. What really prompted me to do this exchange, we have some very serious issues in our society. People are relating to these questions in a very emotional way. I don't think that is going to get us anywhere. If we really want to do something about these issues, we have to get rational about them. So, for example, on climate, you're a denier or you are hysterical about it. So I thought that once we have a market where people put up their money behind what they think is going on, and I asked them, will the global temperatures over the next 10 years increase by more than X, or yes or no? If the consensus believes that there is a problem, then we'll be able to go in a rational way about solving that problem.
How is ForecastEx going so far?
We started in September, and it was starting very, very slowly, but we were extremely lucky that there was this court case about election contracts on prediction markets such as ForecastEx. So the CFTC, who didn't want election contracts on CFTC authorized markets, lost the case, and so we were suddenly unable to list election contracts. So we listed them in very late September, and since that time, the traffic has been picking up gradually and very, very quickly. Today, for example, the last time I looked at it, we were, I think, close to $10 million of election yes or no questions purchased, and I think by the end of the day, we'll reach probably 13 to 14 million.
Are there any other exchanges in this space?
There is just one U.S. exchange that is legal. There are other exchanges outside of the U.S., and they are in places like Bermuda and things like that. But one other exchange in the U.S. that's called Kalshi. The difference between us and them is that we have a U.S. clearinghouse that clears and guarantees all the contracts. Kalshi has, I think, a foreign corporation that guarantees their contracts. So ours is probably safer from that point of view.
How will ForecastEx tackle education?
Tell you frankly, this is much simpler than educating people about how to trade stock options, right? Because this contract is much simpler. It's a simple question. You can buy a yes or you can buy a no. And, if you win, you get $1. If you lose the money you put up. That's very, very simple for people to understand. Much, much simpler than an option. And we have been at this project of educating people for many decades about the stock market and investments and the economy. And so these contracts are supposed to be working together with our product base on the platform, so that people begin to realize that the stock market is basically existing within the economy. The way the economy goes has a huge impact on the various corporations. And so people can think about their investments in a more rational, global manner after they have some experience with these contracts than they did before.
How are these contracts different than binary contracts?
They are different because the event contract pays interest. You buy a contract, say, for 40 cents, and then every day, depending upon the closing price of that contract, we pay you interest on that closing price, currently at 4.3%. And why do we do this? We do this because many of the most interesting contracts are very long-term contracts. If you think that say you think about the national debt. What the national debt is going to be this year versus what it was last year is not very different. But I want to force people to think about where it's going and what the consequences will be. So I asked them, will the national debt in 2035 exceed $66 billion? I mean, $66 trillion, sorry. Yes or no? And so I understand that a person would like to wager on that question, but it would be hard for people to wait around for the next 10 years to see how it comes out, right? So that's why we are paying interest. And then what makes it interesting is if you buy that contract for 40 cents, and as people see, well, the deficit is rising faster than it was supposed to. So the 40 cents goes to 50, 60, 70, 80 cents. Then you get the interest on the 80 cents. So by the time, if you were lucky to buy that contract at a low price and it has gone up, the interest component is going to make a huge difference because it's going to add up to more money than that dollar that you actually win at the end.
How are you dealing with jurisdictions that have bans on binary contracts?
We are currently pending at the Central Bank of Ireland. We are, and also in Canada.
Okay.
And we're asking those regulators to please look at these contracts and see if you want to authorize us to do them or you don't.
How do you deal with people who disagree with your true or false decision?
It's a very good question, and that is a serious limitation because we can only list contracts that there is a credible arbiter that comes out with a result, publicly publishes a result, so that the question is decided based on the publication of that government agency. So we are currently only listing contracts where there is a U.S. government agency that answers the question, because otherwise maybe people could get bribed or there could be some shenanigans going on with whatever
Right.
the resolution is.
What does it mean to have a market where you can only buy and there is no selling?
We did it this way because I thought it's simpler for people to understand that the answer is either yes or no, and they have to put their money on either the yes or the no, so they have to buy the answer that they choose. Now, however, that leaves behind the question, okay, so I buy a question, say I buy a yes, and I don't want to hold it until resolution. I want to get out, say I'm at a profit, and I want to realize my profit. How do I get out? So that what happens is if you buy a no, then the exchange will immediately cancel your two contracts and pay you $1. So if you bought a yes, and then now you buy a no, you know that you're going to get $1. So if you bought a yes for, say, 40 cents, and it went up to 60 cents, and now you can buy a no for 40 cents, then you buy the no, so you spent a total of 80 cents, and you're going to get $1 per contract.
What contracts would you like to see listed?
Well, there are many contracts I'd like to be listed, and I explained earlier the problem that we can only list contracts where there is a government agency that publishes the result or the resolution of the question. And the problem is that there are many, many important questions that no government agency deals with. Say, mostly demographic questions. So we don't know the answer if, more people, how many more people, less people get married nowadays, more people than less people live in families, or more people or less people. I mean, these are I think there are socially very important questions that we don't have clear answers to. I mean, the Department of Commerce does I think a questionnaire, they send out a questionnaire once every, they call it the census, I believe.
Yeah.
They send it about once every 10 years, I think. And they publish something, but that's not happening frequently enough.
Could there be a problem if you are listing too many contracts?
Way to deal with it is to categorize the questions into different buckets. So people who are interested in a certain bucket, they go there, and then they see a limited number of questions relative to their interest.
What would be the value to society if these contracts were successful?
I think that these contracts would give data to legislators about how the public reacts to their publicized intentions. So if, say, there is a question about deficit spending, right? So somebody proposes some legislation relative to deficit spending, but there is not much of an agreement among the legislators as to what they think that passing that piece of legislation, how much that would reduce the deficit. But if we posted that question before this legislation is proposed about what do you expect the deficit to be, and then when the legislation is proposed, we ask it again, what do you now expect the deficit to be? They could see what is the change given that that proposal is now live and it could become law. And the next question is, will it become law? And if they see that as the more people believe that it will become law, the amount of the estimated deficit should fluctuate based on that. So they'll be able to basically have a consensus opinion to drive legislation. And that would be a wonderful outcome, because that would be the ideal thing if in the country people could basically tell their legislators what it is that they want. What is the consensus, right? Because this so far to the left and so far to the right should not go on forever, because this is killing everybody.